Coming up to this episode, what is your Europe doing to help the 50 million Europeans that cannot afford bills, to keep cool during summertime and warm during wintertime? Well, stay tuned to find out. This is Chara Gkioka. Welcome to Actua-TV. Welcome to your Europe.
You don't know what happened to them.
On January 2016, and during one of the coldest nights in Berlin, the temperature dropped down to -8 Celsius degrees. Today, in Athens, the temperature has already reached the 35 Celsius degrees. Yet, in 2016, and within the Europe of 28, there are about 50 million Europeans that are not able to keep either warm or cool. At the same time, according to Eurostat, millions of Europeans live under poverty or in social exclusion, reflecting the 17.2% of European population. On top of that, and only during last April, in the EU of 28, there were more than 21 million unemployed men and women, of whom the 4 millions were youngsters under 25 years old. These numbers pushed the EU Parliament to introduce a new energy deal and claim energy not to be a commodity, but a social right. The deal aims to offer consumers across Europe affordable energy sustainably. It also puts a lot of hope on the renewable types of energy in collaboration with local suppliers, empowering thus consumers. Joining me to this episode, Ms. Theresa Griffin, a member of the European Parliament from the United Kingdom, registered with the group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. Ms. Griffin, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, to begin with, more or less, there are 50 million Europeans that they cannot afford to pay their bills, to keep warm during wintertime, cool during summertime. Can you explain a bit further the reality behind this number?
The reality behind this number is that we do have 50 million men and women across Europe in what we call energy poverty. So it is a real choice for them in terms of their household income, whether they can pay for food or whether they can pay for energy. In northern countries, people are having to make the decision between heating their homes and eating. And in southern countries, in the summer, there are elderly or long-term sick people having to choose between eating or affording putting their air conditioning on. We have got people who are dying because they cannot afford their energy. This can't be right. For instance, in my own constituency, I have, say, a mother who is going to do her weekly shop for her family and is actually saying, well, we'll do without that item of food because my energy bill is due for my electricity at the end of the month, and I can't afford to have my electricity switched off, or I can't afford to have my heating switched off. So literally, we have people choosing between the food that they buy for their family and their energy, which is why in my report, A New Deal for Consumers, I am calling for energy not to be considered as a commodity, but as a basic social right.
Well, could you explain this notion of energy deal a little bit further and be more specific? Can you tell us what is Europe doing to ensure that all European consumers can have sustainable and affordable energy?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, we're calling for a common definition of energy poverty, and we're calling on all of the institutions to actually place energy poor citizens at the heart of their policy making. In terms of New Deal for Consumers, what went through plenary last week is actually very specific. So we're requesting suppliers to notify consumers in or alongside their bills about the cheapest tariff that can be available for them based on their historic patterns of consumption. So the onus now comes on the energy supplier to tell that citizen what the cheapest tariff could be for them. They don't have to go and find it out themselves. On or alongside the bills, they need to be told what the cheapest tariff is. We're also saying that suppliers have got to automatically notifying consumers how much they could save by switching suppliers. So in other words, how much money a household can save. So maybe that mum with 3 children, which is crucial. And finally, which is a big thing, at the moment, if you switch your energy supplier, you are charged a termination fee. You are not charged a termination fee if you switch your phone supplier, for instance. So we are saying an end to termination fees. If you, as that energy poor citizen, can find a deal which is cheaper and more appropriate for you and your family, why should you be paying termination fees to switch? It's not right. We need to be thinking about everything that can help energy poor citizens. So, for instance, energy poor citizens tend to live in poorer housing conditions. So we have to look at energy poverty and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is the first fuel, and often poor citizens are living in the worst housing conditions. So we've got to be able to help them to become energy efficient. And for every 1% of buildings that are renovated, we could, in terms of energy efficiency savings, renovate 3 million homes across Europe. We've got to look at energy efficiency alongside energy poverty. Also, we have to look at renewables because we have to look at our climate change objectives and our decarbonisation objectives. So what we need to do is to make sure that the use of renewable energy is affordable for our poorest citizens, and that information on green energy is made readily available to our energy poor citizens. And often in these circumstances, we will have to work, for instance, with local authorities, local cooperatives, to make sure that that information on renewables is available to local families, but also that it's affordable.
So this is indeed renewable energy.
Yeah.
I am assuming that this situation of so many millions of Europeans not being able to pay their bills is linked with the millions of Europeans that they are living under poverty or they are living in social exclusion. Can you explain if there is any specific treatment for this category? And I am referring to at least the 17.2% of European population that actually have a very poor income.
Absolutely. I mean, 17.2% is unacceptable. The first thing that we have to do, and we're working very hard on this as an S&D group, is to actually make sure that we have a social Europe which is about jobs and growth, and that we actually enable, for instance, our long-term unemployed young people. The fact that we have so many young people who are unemployed is a scandal, that we work alongside them to give them quality training and apprenticeships to mean that they can get the high-income jobs of the future. I'm also working very closely with my colleagues on the digital single market. In the digital single market, there is a skills gap. We need to make sure that we are equipping through education and training and quality apprenticeships people who are at the moment excluded from jobs to actually get those digitalised jobs, so it doesn't become the Internet of Things, it becomes the Internet for people and nobody is excluded. So it's the same digital energy. We need to make sure that people have got access to well-paid jobs, but we need to make sure, and this is what we tried to do in New Deal, that they're also given the opportunity to pay the best deal for them and they're not being ripped off by energy suppliers. That's crucial. We need to talk about the social aspect of the digital single market. We need to talk about the workforce of the future. We need to think about, from coding education now when children are 7 or 8, how we can have ladders of progression to enable them to access the new emerging jobs in the digital single market, and indeed the new green jobs that are emerging in renewables. We have to have decent quality education and training, and also we've got to be able to support the people who are in the existing workforce.
How can we do that?
So we don't have a digital divide. We can work very closely with our social partners, with our trade unions, to make sure we have upskilling of existing workers, but also, for instance, to make sure that women who who are returning to work are supported with the new skills. So, for instance, if a mother has had a couple of years off with her children, she's not coming back disadvantaged into a digitalised, fast-moving workplace, but she's actually equipped with the skills and training to take advantage of that new way of working.
So is this a platform, can we say? It works like a platform?
It's a platform about social inclusion, absolutely. I think that's a very good way of putting it. A platform that actually cares about every citizen in the EU, be that in terms of energy, be that in terms of digitalisation, that nobody is left behind because of affordability, also because of physical isolation or because they live in a rural area. We have to make sure that all of Europe is connected in terms of energy and the digital single market.
Ms. Griffin, I have to sincerely thank you. And thank you all of you. See you next week.
Actua-TV. Het hele verhaal.